Welcome to Steamboat Gravel Live, presented by Wahoo Fitness. We're in beautiful Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Let's get into some gravel racing.
Oh my gosh, the vibe out here is so amazing. You and I got to start with the black course ride today, rolling out with 1,000 people out of downtown Steamboat Springs. Like, just the adrenaline, the energy, the vibe down here was so amazing. And it was really cool to kind of roll out and see what was happening out on course before we had to come back into the booth.
Absolutely, and I will say, we're trying to bring gravel racing. Gravel racing is, we're out in the middle of nowhere. We're gonna get you footage when we can, make, cameras out on gravel roads. So right now it sounds like our pro men's field is about 5 miles from the finish. They're through a lot of the technical sections, but we're gonna get to you as soon as we can. We're gonna get that live footage.
I mean, like as you mentioned, gravel racing is usually out in the middle of nowhere, and so trying to get cell service out here is very, very challenging. There's a lot of sections out here that it's just impossible to have a camera with live footage. So what's been happening though is there have been motos with cameras out on course, recording the action. So we hope to bring you some of the action that has been recorded from earlier parts of the race. Once the guys have finished, once the women have finished, we can go back and show you how things unfolded today.
Absolutely, but one thing we do know is that this course is brutal, and this field of athletes is incredible. A great bevy of talent. There's a big prize purse up for grabs here as well, so we have a lot of the best athletes around. But right now you can see a big overview of the race course we have here in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And I will say, Meredith, it was nice that first 60 minutes felt pretty easy, but we didn't have the rest of that race to do today.
No, not at all. And excuse me for saying so, but I didn't think it was easy, even in the first 60 minutes. I mean, the peloton, like I said, it was 1,000 people rolling out together. It was hard. It was fast. I was expecting there to be a little bit slower rollout. No, they were on the gas pretty much from the gun, waiting to get to that first gravel section. Started on pavement, about, 3 miles in, hit the first section of gravel, and everybody was just antsy, ready to get to that section.
There's a lot of energy. You can tell people are excited to race, and this course is one that is a great race to be able to knock those kind of cobwebs off. It hurts though. We're at altitude too, so there's a lot going on in gravel racing. Obviously, you're racing against the terrain. The gravel roads are challenging at times, but here we're up at a high altitude. It's really dry. There's been some smoke in the area, so it's 144 miles, the athletes that we're covering here today. That's a lot to get through as an athlete.
Yes, and as you mentioned, it has been smoky here in Colorado recently. We've been fortunate over the last few days that the smoke has cleared out a little bit. It's actually a little bit breezy right now, which we also haven't felt the last couple days, so that might be welcome for the athletes because it's also been hot. It's the high today is in the mid 80s, so when on a course like this, that's a lot of sections are completely exposed. That sun is just beating down and it gets hot. So the riders are going to need to make sure that nutrition and hydration are on par today.
Absolutely, and that's one thing. All the athletes that have great experience, when you ask one tip for the amateurs or the age groupers, they said drink and eat, and don't forget to drink and eat. But right now we're going through some of the course sections that are kind of a primary focus where the race is going to get torn up. We went through Primal Fly Gulch here earlier today, and you could tell it was getting spicy through there.
Oh, absolutely. There's already a few little climbs leading into Fly Gulch. You get to Fly Gulch, and that's where it's loose gravel, and everybody is kind of like trying to find the right line, and you're crossing from one side of the road to the other. It's a nice long climb, and then down the backside it's fast, and you're kind of two-wheel drifting through some of those turns. So it's spicy.
And that's kind of the first time these athletes will kind of know the skill level of the other athletes around them, right? So you see a lot of people tripoding, put their leg out there, making sure they've got traction. So it's a little bit spicy, as you said, going through that first descent. And then we go through SRAM, Steamboat Lake, QOM, KOM. That's another section that's going to, spread the field out a little bit. But it's hard because everybody's got so much energy. It's like people forget. You want to remind them, hey, you've got another 100 miles to go. So point being, these sections are very fast because you have such a large field of different athletes that can push the pace at different times.
Right. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the melee of, like, maybe you know that you need to back off, but you just want to go, go, go. And now we're at the Zip Fetcher double track, which is the new section of the course this year. And it's really exciting that the Fetcher family was able to open up this land for us to use this as part of the course. And it was really, really fortunate. And we're so thankful that the family opened up their ranch.
Well, it shows you how much the community here at Steamboat Springs has gotten behind this event. You know, people want this to go on and want it to be successful. And as we go down here through the Orange Seal Mystic segment, another challenging section. And here we go. We're back on race coverage. We've got our leaders here, and we've been told Ian Boswell is out there. That was definitely Alex Howes. But the last split we got had Alex Howes, Ian Boswell, Freddie Ovett, Adam Roberge, and Russell Finsterwald all within a few seconds. So you can see we have a few riders here. But right now it looks like, correct me if you think I'm wrong, Meredith, but that Ian Boswell is third wheel on that. And then Alex Howes, and I'm not totally sure who this athlete is on the right side, but that could be Freddie. That could be Freddie or Adam, but we'll get news to you guys here. But this is the action. So just a few miles from town, they've gone through, Meredith, that Cow Creek section. That's the most technical section of the race after all the hard climbing, the hard road climb up Corkscrew. But now it's just this road time trial, and you can see there's two athletes chasing far behind with the moto behind. So we see Alex Howes. We're going to get the name of that second rider, and then we have Ian Boswell, those top three athletes, Meredith.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this group is Alex Howes raced Leadville yesterday.
That is crazy. Can we say what Leadville is for those that don't know?
So Leadville is a 100-mile mountain bike race in Leadville at 10,000 feet. Where it starts at 10,000 feet. Starts at 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
So the fact that Alex is with this front group, I would say, I don't know, maybe a little bit unexpected, but also not too unusual because Alex Howes is used to racing these distances. He's used to racing back-to-back days like this. So, yeah, this group looks like they're working together pretty well right now.
And it looks like that is actually Pete Stetina.
Yes.
We must have had, Pete had issues yesterday with his timing chip going over the mark, so he's made sure he carried that same timing chip onto his gravel bike here today. So our top three are athletes that we might have expected on this race, this tactical race over gravel and road. So we have right now in the front of the screen in pink, that is Alex Howes. To his right is Ian Boswell, the winner of Unbound earlier this year. And behind him is Peter Stetina. And Peter Stetina, I think right now, he's the athlete that's kind of been winning everything. And both of those two athletes, Alex Howes and Peter Stetina, raced that Leadville race you're talking about.
Yes, Stetina actually had a great race yesterday.
A great race.
Alex was a little off. He said he didn't have great legs, whatever might have happened. But Stetina had a great race, sprinting to the finish line with Payson McElvin.
Yeah,
so,
crazy.
At the end of 100 miles, when you have to sprint to the finish line.
You know what you don't want to do at the end of 100 miles is sprint to the finish line. So right now, you might be asking, so we got three athletes. They're close to town. We know it's road finish for the last few miles. Why are they working so hard, even though they know it's going to come down to a sprint? They're working very well together. They're talking to each other. They're pulling through. They're taking turns. It's because, as we might be able to see after this truck comes through, it looks like two or maybe three riders, Meredith, are 20, 30 seconds behind.
Absolutely. And these three guys in the lead right now know each other so well.
Okay,
They've done this, together so many times. And so they know that by working together, that increases their chances of at least a podium finish, where if they stop and start playing games and stare at each other, there's a chance that the guys behind them can catch them. And then it just adds, the ratio of riders who could win the sprint, it completely changes.
Totally. And one of the reasons that all these three riders know each other so well is because they've spent time on the World Pro Tour as road cyclists. So they're very, very strong. Is there a little bit of camaraderie, Meredith, in the fact that they're like, okay, it's the three of us, one of us road guys. These gravel guys give us a lot of crap, not being able to ride our bikes well on gravel, maybe not having the technical abilities, but let's make sure one of the three of us gets up the road and was able to take the win here at Steamboat.
For sure. And, these guys have been racing gravel now for a few years. So they, just fairly, well, Alex is still racing the World Tour.
Yes.
Ian and Pete are no longer racing World Tour. Gravel is their 100% focus. So they just, it's really cool to see. And one of the things that a lot of people will talk about with gravel racing is the camaraderie.
Yes.
And within the racing. It's like these guys don't necessarily want it to be that world tour, just super, I mean, don't get me wrong, they are racing 100% against each other, but there's a different kind of like mentality, I think, when it comes to gravel racing of like, yeah, we're going to work together. We will stop together in the feed zones. We're in this together until the finish when we're fighting it out.
Absolutely, and that is one thing that's had separated gravel from other sports, that there is a sense of camaraderie. I don't know about you, but for me, when I finish a race, the amount of new cell phone numbers I have in my phone is how I know how great of an experience it was.
Right. I mean, and we saw that this morning when we rolled out with the group, and we're just, you can see people chatting to each other. Before the hammer really drops, people are like, "Hey, how is it going? We haven't seen you in a while," and whatever. And so that's just the really cool part about the vibe of gravel racing.
Oh, totally. Okay, now as we see these riders coming in, again, they're getting pretty close to town. It does seem, and again, Meredith, it's hard because we are passing some riders from our shorter courses, but it does seem like there's still one athlete that's behind that's trying to catch up to these three. But so watching these athletes take poles, we might have recreational cyclists. You can see Ian flicking the elbow here. So they're working together. What we're talking about working together is they're sharing the weight of pushing the wind, because there's a big draft behind, right? So Ian was done with his work. He flicked his elbow. That's time for Pete Stetina to come through. Now, often you'll see in the races like the Tour de France, people rotating really quickly. It seems like these guys are taking 30-second minute poles. Tell us a little bit about the difference of that kind of tactic and why they might be doing that.
Well, I mean, it's something that they've probably talked about. They are pros, right? So they know exactly the kind of length poles that they need to take. This gives each person a little bit. So, the person who's in second and third position right now, for those of you who aren't familiar with drafting, the second and third riders right now behind Alex are getting a huge amount of recovery rest from their draft. They're saving like 30% of their energy right now. So the person on the front, is taking the brunt of the wind. They're doing the most of the work, while the other riders get to take a little bit of a breath. And I would, sooner than later, Alex just flicked his elbow for Ian to come through. Sooner or later, we're going to see somebody flick their elbow, and that next rider isn't going to come through. Because now they know, okay, all bets are off. We were in this together.
You're right.
Now we're close enough that I've got to save something. I've got to be a little bit more tactical to get ready for the sprint.
That's a great point. And I think one thing, we've mentioned it before, but if it was three athletes that weren't buddies or have a lot of shared experiences on the world tour, they would be playing those games already. Right now, it's very unique to see three athletes trying to win a race that's 145 miles long, taking even turns, maybe even encourage each other. You could see Ian Boswell looking over his shoulder there. So it does look like there's a pretty big gap. The next vehicle behind is still in front of some athletes chasing. But just want to let you all know, right now we have coverage of the men's peloton. As we said, this is gravel racing. Our footage comes and goes. We're out in the middle of nowhere. We're doing what we can, but we do have great women's coverage coming to you as soon as we get the footage of that from Wahoo Fitness is our presenting sponsor, and they're going to make sure that we have GPS access on where those women are, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. But right now, the updates that we have is Lauren De Crescenzo, and I'm going to say it wrong, and I apologize to Lauren. I apologize to all her friends and family, but I'm trying. She is in the lead. She has a gap over the last time. It was Lauren Stevens of a few minutes, but she was driving it up that Trout Creek climb, the last that we saw.
Yeah, and so we're continuing to see these guys share the workload right now, because again, they do not want the riders who are chasing to catch them. But that being said, the fact that these three guys, are working together, it makes it really hard for somebody who might be chasing solo or even just with one other person to catch a group of three who are working really, really well together. There could be 2 or 3 chasers behind them, but if they're not working as a unit and they're not sharing the workload, that's when they're not going to be able to catch these guys.
Totally. And if we were talking about a group of 3, if you could pick 3 of the athletes with the biggest engines that are going to have energy and effort at the end of a 144-mile bike ride, it would be these 3 athletes. A lot of these athletes focused on stage racing. Ian Boswell was over in Europe for years, looking over his shoulder. He wants to make sure that he continues to work, but if they've got a gap of a minute, he's like, okay, we can shut it down, or maybe he starts playing that game. But anyways, all these athletes are used to these big efforts day after day after day. But Meredith, I can't say how impressed I am with the fact that I thought athletes like Pete Stetina and Alex Howes that were doing Leadville yesterday and this race today were just giving it to the other athletes.
Right.
Because they race for 7 hours at altitude. Are you kidding?
I would agree. And it's not that they just race for 7 hours. It's like you said, they race for 7 hours at 10,000 feet and above.
Nuts.
Yeah. So I think it's incredible that these athletes are here. So again, Leadboat is the combination of the overall time from Leadville, a 100-mile mountain bike race in Leadville, Colorado, and then a 144-mile race today here in Steamboat Springs. So 2 of these 3 men leading the race today are in this overall Leadboat challenge and race yesterday. And just a kind of a fun fact, I guess, when Tom Hopper and Alex Howes were driving over here last night from Leadville and the team vehicle, they were rear-ended. Somebody ran into their bike rack with their bikes on the back and blew up Alex's rear wheel. So I think he had a little bit of stress last night. Maybe that bit of adrenaline is helping him today.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the transfer you're looking for sure. But I mean, again, about these athletes doing these 2 races, if you ask athletes that have been around the world or racing in North America, what's the hardest race they've ever done? Leadville.
Yes.
Right? Every time.
Yes.
And this, I mean, I raced this race a few years ago, and I would say this is one of the hardest races I've ever done because it's, you know, there's some fast sections, but there's almost 10,000 feet of climbing, 144 miles as we see Alex Howes do the super tuck here. We're non-UCI sanctioned here, so do whatever you want, Alex. Get as much speed as you want, but amazing effort by these 2. But Meredith, we did have, it looks like, again, we're getting data as soon as we can, but it looks like Lauren Stevens now is in the lead. She's taken control over Lauren De Crescenzo, who is chasing on her own. Lauren Stevens just won a national championship a few weeks ago, and it's one of those things that if you know Lauren Stevens and you watch her, you'd be like, man, I assumed she had won like 4 by now.
Right.
Like it was a matter of time before she did.
Definitely. And, you know, and watching the women's race that day, it was amazing teamwork from the Tibco teammates. Clara Hansinger, her teammate, brought her back up to Lauren De Crescenzo. And it was an amazing effort for Clara to do that, to then be able to launch Lauren past the other Lauren to solo in for the win.
And again, we're going to get to this women's coverage as soon as we can once we get cameras live out to a section, of course, where we've got reception. But Meredith, right now they're on a very straight section, and you can see Ian Boswell continues to look over his shoulder. If they look over now, they're going to see that there are no athletes chasing, and now we're going to start seeing the gamesmanship of what these athletes are doing. Because, you know, you prepare for a 144-mile race where attrition is going to be important. Attacking over a climb is going to be very important. We know Ian tried to attack on Trout Creek, pushing the pace on Corkscrew. But now it's who has the most watts for 10 to 15 seconds that's going to win this race.
Right.
If you're Ian Boswell, you know, he won a sprint at Unbound, but he was a little shocked, I think, by his win. I think that might be the only sprint win of his career. But we're going to start, point being, long-winded answer, as I often have. We're going to start seeing some gamesmanship here.
Definitely. I think once these guys are confident enough that the chasers are far enough behind, that's when they're going to start sitting up and looking at each other and being like, your turn, your turn, you know, and the fair trade, the equality of the polls is going to kind of back off a little bit, and they're going to start playing games because no one wants to be the person to lead out the sprint. No one wants to be that one where somebody else can jump off their wheel and come in for the sprint first.
No, absolutely. And, you know, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a technical finish at all, but there's a right-hand corner and then maybe 100 meters straightaway and then a left-hand corner. And I want to say, Meredith, it's probably 600, 700 meters straightaway. So, you know, they're going to see some positioning here coming up pretty soon of if you put that other athlete in front, they're kind of screwed. Like, they're not going to be able to get in a position that they want to. So here's that right, I believe, that right-hand corner we're talking about. Those athletes turn right. Our moto kept going, so we're going to get footage. They get on this straightaway, but at sprint finish, they're going to finish, Meredith, right here behind us. We might be the eyes on it, but here we go. Right now, we've got, it looks like Pete Stetina is in the lead. Alex Howes in second. Right now, Meredith, Ian Boswell is in the prime position. He's the one who wants to be in third, but there's a little gap, which could be a little bit of tactics, you know, making sure you can get in that wind gap and go up. But Alex Howes opens it.
Yes, oh, this is super exciting. You can see the fans along the side of the road cheering. They're coming in.
Pete's gone. Ian is behind him. Ian's trying to come around, but he can't. And it is Alex Howes is your champion at Steamboat Gravel with Ian Boswell in second place and Peter Stetina in third place. Amazing performance. again, Meredith, the first and third athlete raced a 100-mile mountain bike race yesterday in Leadville. That is nuts. And the fact that Alex Howes had the ability to outsprint Ian Boswell, there's going to be some trash talking because Ian's got fresh legs.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think, I don't know, I would say that maybe Alex was looking for a little redemption from yesterday because, again, he didn't have a great day yesterday. So, you know, I'm sure he's so excited to be able to take the win today. And, again, what I love is that seeing these guys, you know, shake it out, hug it out, and finish. They all have so much respect for each other. And,
so
you know,
good.
Yeah, it's great.
Man, in my predictions, I did not have 3-person sprint with 2 athletes that had done Leadville the day before on my notes. But
No.
Alex Howes, there he is, your rightful champion.
Yes, that was fantastic ride by these guys. I can't wait to go back and look at some of the footage that, you know, see how it all started to unfold, where these guys attacked. We were getting a lot of different information throughout the day about who was leading, and I don't think we, you know, knew Stetina was there until the very end.
No, absolutely. And a lot of times in gravel racing, Meredith, if you're hiding and you're not doing anything, you're not the one on a break, you're the one who knows the racing happens in the last 30 miles, right? And Alex Howes, as your champion, obviously knew that. He knew to be patient. Part of that patience might have come from the fact that he did a race yesterday. But let's talk about Alex Howes. He's been going into what we call an alternative schedule, but now as a bike racer, you're kind of doing a lot of different racing. Everybody's doing that. But he's been doing some mountain bike racing, some gravel racing, but had those like big performances. I'd say by far this is Alex Howes' best result when it comes to like a mixed surface ride.
Yeah, definitely. You know, in I guess 2019 when EF started their alternative, you know, program, Alex and Lachlan were like the 2 premier riders doing the gravel races. They showed up at what was then called Dirty Kansas, now Unbound, and you know they didn't take the win there. So I think they've just been like pushing and pushing, waiting for this day to finally add the W to their palmares.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you're watching Steamboat Gravel Live presented by Wahoo Fitness. We're going to come back on the other side of this with more great gravel racing coverage.
Welcome back, gravel racing fans. We are here in beautiful Steamboat Springs, Colorado, where we just saw the finish of an exciting race. Alex Howes taking the win, and we are going to send it down to the finish line with Matt Liotta and Alex Howes now for a live interview.
About the fact that you did a 100-mile race yesterday. How's that feeling on the legs today?
Yeah, we did a Leadville 100 mountain bike race yesterday, and yeah, it totally kicked my butt. Had a terrible day yesterday, and then got in the van, drove over here, got in a car accident on the way.
Here's a little mechanical.
Yeah, we got hit from behind, and my rig was on the back. Oops. So we had to scramble last night and put something together, and it worked out, you know. So
that's awesome. So this race, we talk about it being possibly like pretty tactical. Obviously, it feels a lot like a road race. There's some tough gravel sections in it, but tell us how the race panned out and how you were able to get to the group of 3 off the front.
You know, I thought it would be like a little more tactical early on, but really, for the most part, it was a race of attrition. It was pretty hard, pretty full gas most of the day. A couple of big climbs broke it up. I could tell I was kind of on the back foot on the hills, and so I guess it was just after one of the bigger ones I sent it, tried to get a bit of a gap, and I was happy that I did because it meant that I barely survived over the other ones, and then just kind of a tricky section coming down towards the end, the finish there, kind of a creek bed sort of thing, and Pete, Ian, and I went away kind of in there, and
So the World Tour guys giving it to it on the gravel descent, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know where all the mountain bikers were.
That's the only clip they're going to be playing all week, but you guys had the horsepower. So it looked like you guys were working pretty well together that last 10 miles going in?
Yeah, once we had a bit of a gap there, you know, it's hard to do better than 3. So we were working pretty well together. I was thinking Pete and Ian would get a little, you know, funky towards the end there, but, you know, they kept riding because I guess they like each other and they like me, but yeah, neither one of them are necessarily known as sprinters. So
you would have gotten a lot of crap if you hadn't have beat those 2. Is that what you're saying?
I would have, but at the same time, I was cramping for the last 60 kilometers I was cramping. So a sprint like that, I mean, you know, you saw. I mean, Ian won the sprint at Unbound this year. You know, it's at the end of a hard day, it's anybody's game.
Okay, so you rode 100 miles today, 144 today. You're going to be the lead boat champion. Or no, you're not. Sorry, Pete Stetina had some time on you. What do you?
Like an hour on me.
Oh yeah, the legs weren't so good yesterday. That's right. So what are you doing tomorrow? Another big ride?
I reckon I'll be a little hungover tomorrow. But got a internal conference call at 8 a.m. with EF coaching, so that should be fun. But
there you go. Well, thanks so much for the chat. We're going to let you get on the beers and enjoy the rest of your day. Congratulations on amazing performance.
yeah, thanks. I think it should only take 1 or 2, and I'll be down for the count.
There you go. Thanks so much. That's Alex Howes. Meredith, amazing performance by him. Let's talk more about the women's racing and what else is going on, but back up to you in the studio.
What an amazing finish to the men's race. As you heard Alex Howes talking about, he didn't have a great day yesterday. He was cramping in the last 60 Ks of the race today, but he somehow pulled it off. I would say of the 3, he is known as the sprinter of those 3 guys, and they all worked really well together all the way into the finish. So he was able to pull off a great sprint and take the win today. I think that might be a little bit of redemption from a bad day yesterday at the Leadville 100, but Pete Stetina and Ian Boswell, all 3 of them were working great together all the way to the finish. And so great race by these guys today. I'm excited to go back and see the footage from earlier today to see where the race might have broke up. But as you're seeing from this replay now, they were working really, really well together, sharing the poles. And honestly, give it to Ian and Pete for pulling all the way to the finish, because really Alex is kind of these 3 riders would be known as a sprinter of this group. So they left it up to the very finish and let the sprint decide the win today. And it was great. And Matt, now that you're back with us, Alex Howes has just got the best personality, right? I mean, it's just awesome to talking to him after a finish like that, and he can joke around even though he's still tired.
I've never met Alex, and you're absolutely right. Great to talk to him. I will say he's cracked for sure, but I think that accentuates his personality. But there's a replay of them going over the finish line. To say that is close finish would be an understatement.
Yeah, very close finish. And man, I hope that Alex actually it holds true to his word and has a little bit of a celebration. I mean, honestly, all these guys tonight, everybody who's out here deserves major kudos for their effort today. This is not an easy race. Whether you're crossing the line first or you're crossing the line last, it's a long day out there in the sun, and so everybody deserves a major, a high five and big hug at the finish line today.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that we've talked about a lot about gravel is that it feels like a family, right? And especially for the last 18 months with COVID and a lot of races not happening, this has felt like a family reunion to a lot of people. So couple that with well-deserved drink after the race and all your buddies you haven't seen around in town. No doubt there's going to be some good celebrations, but well-deserved by Alex Howes, and a great performance. And again, I'm going to keep saying it, but to me, my mind is blown with the fact that he did that after Leadville. And he did point out he didn't have great legs, so he didn't go as deep as athlete, but Pete Stetina is going to be our lead boat champion, coming across in 3rd place. He was 5th place, just a sprint finish behind Payson McCallum yesterday.
Yeah, so we don't have to worry about that 1 second between Payson and Pete today, but so I don't think there's going to be any sprint off for that. But great ride, and and we're starting to get some updates on the women's race, which we hope to go see live coverage here soon. Sort of depends on where they are in course and whether or not we're able to pick up cell phone coverage. So we're not exactly sure where we're going to pick up the race, but the last information that I got is Lauren Stevens is in the lead with Whitney Allison a little ways back from her, Crystal Anthony. Lauren De Crescenzo, I think, has slid back a little bit. Sophia Gomez, that's your top 5.
There you go. And a little bit back is 8 minutes from Lauren Stevens. That's a lot. And did I not say today, Whitney Allison, she's one that could win this race. She is a tough cyclist. So she definitely has the ability to win a race like today, but right now holding strong in 2nd place. A race that started about 6.5 hours ago. We're going to show you kind of how that started here earlier today in Steamboat Springs.
guy in the hangar.
That looks like a pretty great place to ride a bike, Meredith. And we rode some of the beginning of that, but that was the Fetcher Ranch section. A lot of that shows that it wasn't, again, we have just coverage of some of the end of the race coming into town with that pavement. It shows that those athletes had to do some stream crossing, some single track, some amazing stuff. But right now we're able to get back to live coverage where we have the women's race here on screen. And we're going to be able to get names of all these athletes here as soon as we can. But right now you see those athletes taking their polls, a male athlete on the front of the race or front of the group. And they're going to do the same thing we saw those other three athletes vying for the win doing, is kind of sharing that work.
Yes, and the last information we got was Lauren Stevens is in the lead with about 8 minutes back to Whitney, Allison, and Crystal Anthony, who seem to be together, at least the last bit that we heard. Emily Newsom riding in fourth with Lauren De Crescenzo in fifth. So we're still trying to figure out. This looks like Lauren De Crescenzo right here. We're not 100% sure if this is necessarily the leaders according to the information that we have.
Yep.
I would say it's not, but at one point we did hear that she was looking incredibly strong. So we're still waiting to find out exactly where we are on course with this live coverage that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, we're out there. These athletes are spread across 144 miles, so we're doing our best, again, to get as much information and the best shots we can for you. But there we see Lauren doing some work with some male athletes that were out on course, and she is still pushing that pace. But the last we saw, she was a little bit behind. But, again, just, Meredith, as we saw with Pete Stetina, he didn't his timing mat his timing chip wasn't working, so it's possible hers stopped working, and that's why it's showing her a little bit behind. But we're going to get that information to you as soon as we can.
Yeah, and also so much can happen from between the last time we got information and got results and they crossed the timing mats to what we're seeing now. So, I mean, anything happens in gravel. I mean, anything can happen in any bike race, right? That's why a lot of times you always say, well, thankfully there's another race next, because mechanicals, crashes, just flat out bonking in a 144-mile race in this heat where you're totally exposed, as you can see. The body just starts to shut down. You're feeling good one minute, and the next minute you're like, I feel completely drained, my stomach's upset, lots of things can go wrong.
Totally, and that's what makes the experienced rider, an experienced athlete like Lauren is your body gives you some warning signals. And you got to make sure you hear those warning signals. Okay, I need to take the foot off the gas a little bit, drink a bunch of water, eat a little bit more food, and Lauren is great at that. I was chatting with her yesterday. I mean, she set the Everesting record earlier in the year. I don't know that her record still stands, but I believe she was the first woman under 9 hours, I believe. But so she does these crazy events where she's 29,000 something feet in a day. She's pushing her body. She's used to going into that pain cave. Both physically and mentally. And I think that's a really important part of gravel racing when it comes to when the attrition starts, that's when the head really has to kick in.
Well, she's also our 2021 winner of Unbound.
Yeah, totally.
So she knows what it's like to go 200 miles and win a race. So going 144 for her might feel a little short.
Yeah.
She's like, wait, I still want to go another 60 miles. I doubt she's going to be saying that at the finish line, but she definitely knows what it takes through training, nutrition, hydration, tactics, how to, strategy, pacing, all those things. She knows what it takes. So this is nothing new to her today. And if she is in fact in the lead right here, I mean, she's done her homework. She knows what she needed to do today.
Yeah, again, and as of now, what we think we know is that we have Lauren on screen, but she is not necessarily the leader of our race, but we're going to get that to you as soon as possible. But one thing to note out, there is camaraderie like we talked about. So right now, Lauren is riding with two men that started the race at the same time. One of the beautiful things, I think, about gravel racing and what we thought today when we rode is we started with 600-700 people at once, all different shapes and sizes, and it's that community and everybody starting as one, so it's one mass start. So that's why we see after things have been scuttled around, Lauren is riding with two men, and they're taking even turns.
Sure. There's a lot of conversation as to whether or not, are we going to get to a point where the women should start separate from the men? There's a lot of conversation around there, but, because some women say, I don't want other riders or teammates or whatever working for my competitors, but, it's a mass start. We had 1,000 people at the start line today. Lauren here is mixed in with two guys she probably just organically fell into this group with these guys. Again, they are, trading poles here. It's not like they are just doing all the work for Lauren. She is in the middle of this, taking her turns too. So, she's found herself in a good position where she has other people to help her do the work, where sometimes other riders might be out there by themselves. And so then you have to ask, is it worth sitting up a little bit to be caught by a group from behind so that I can sit in and take a little bit of a breath and, and hopefully with a group working together, maybe you can close that gap.
Totally, and that's the race experience, and that's where kind of the race knowledge comes in. You're right, I saw even today some athletes that were 15 seconds off the back of the front group trying as hard as they could to catch, but if they would have looked over, they would have seen 45 people behind them if they just sit up for a second. It'd be a little bit easier, but Lauren is someone that very well knows those tactics and how important that they are.
Sure, sometimes it's risky when you see that gap start to open up in front of you. You've got to decide, okay, do I burn a match to close that gap or to try to jump across? Because generally that's if you can, that's kind of what you want to do, is you start to panic a little bit when you see that rubber band start to stretch a little. But if you stay calm and you stay with a group that, as long as they're working cohesively and they're working together, then generally a big group like that is going to be able to close a gap and get back across to the leaders or whatever group is in front of you.
Absolutely. And one thing, I think I can't not mention the fact that Lauren has gone through some trials and tribulations, right? She's had a lot she's had to work through to get back to the top of the sport, right?
Yes. Several years ago, she had a terrible, awful crash. She suffered from a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah.
She spent a lot of time in rehab. And it's really an incredible story that she was able to come back from that and not only start riding her bike again. She's been in grad school. She now works for the CDC.
Crazy.
In the Southeast. And so, for her to come back from such a setback like that, she was a strong racer when that happened. So the fact that she's been able to get back to where she was prior to her accident is just phenomenal, and it's an example of how determined and of her perseverance.
Absolutely. I mean, if she's not an inspiration, it's impossible for you to be inspired at this point, right? And she's awesome. She's great to talk to. She's a big encourager of the other athletes that are out here, and she's, it's about the journey, and her journey allows her to be at the front of these big bike races, but that doesn't diminish her encouraging people of other skill levels to participate as well.
Right. We've talked about, we mentioned it already today, just how much gravel racing kind of feels like one big family out there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of camaraderie out there. And I would imagine that as some of these riders are passing the riders from the shorter race or whatever has happened in front of them, they're encouraging them along the way too. It's great to see, like, everybody's sharing. Everybody knows they're suffering out there. So when you can share that with each other, it's another incentive to help you get to the finish.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about that shared experience. And again, yeah, it's so hard out there. There's such long races. But right now, looking at the screen, is Lauren De Crescenzo having a great race right now. And we're getting, again, it's gravel. There's people all over the place, so we're getting information when we can. But right now, we're going to say I tentatively confirm that Lauren is in the lead of this race right now, and that's why she's pushing the pace so hard.
Right, and it looks to me like there's really no one else in sight. Really,
No.
The only other riders that we're seeing are ones that they're passing right now. So it looks like she has a pretty solid gap. If she is indeed in the lead, it looks like she has a pretty solid gap to anyone who might be behind chasing. So it looks like, I'm not sure yet if this is the final pavement climb, if they've gone through the Cow Creek section yet, or where exactly they are on course. But either way, these riders are sharing the workload. They all look really strong and are, motivating each other to keep pushing to the finish.
Oh, absolutely. They're pushing that effort for sure. And this is one of the faster sections where we are on new pavement. So it is, we do think this is post Cow Creek. We'll know here pretty soon. If they take a right-hand corner here, we'll know that they still have Cow Creek to go, but it does look like this is one of the final drags into town. And she's doing a pretty darn fast time. And if anybody says she was sitting on wheels, you could say those gentlemen behind her are having a hard time staying on Lauren's wheel, if anything.
Exactly. I mean, they're all kind of, you can see them all like putting their heads down at times. I'm sure they've gone through a lot of dark places today.
Totally.
But I mean, she really does look like she's in control right now. And I think these other guys are maybe just trying to hang on to her wheel. And
Jeff Kabush right now getting caught by our women's leader. Sorry to call you out there, Jeff, but you would have done it if it was anybody else. But right now, and he might take a pull or two, but he's having a chat with those athletes. One of our pre-race favorites, not his day today, but he'll be back next year, no doubt. Was an animator of the race 2 years ago.
Sure.
But right now, it does look like Lauren is having a good time. And again, we do believe this is post Cow Creek, so not too far from town. And we have had a lot of people ask what the top 10 results were. So not to diminish Lauren's race and what she's doing out here today, but quickly, as we see Jeff Kabush taking a pull at the front of the course, we're going to go through that top 10 men's. As we know, it was Alex Howes, Ian Boswell in second place, Peter Stetina in third, Adam Roberge in fourth place, Freddie Ovett from the Legion team in fifth, Russell Finsterwald in sixth place. He did Leadville as well yesterday. Callan Strickland, he was fourth here a couple years ago, seventh here today. Noah Granigan from Wildlife Generation Cycling was in eighth place. Brendan Wirtz, I heard Brendan was an ex-collegiate rower for Stanford, so no doubt he's pretty darn strong. And then 10th place was Lawrence Tandam, who also rode Leadville. But so right now we can see the buildings here. She is very, very close to town, Meredith.
yeah, and you can just see her. She is not slowing down. She's dropped
She's
her.
dropped him. She's dropped him.
She's going for the finish. She doesn't care that she has the time behind her, that gap is like, we don't even know. You can't see anybody behind her right now. She doesn't care. She just wants to get to, at this point, I think she just wants to get to the finish as fast as she can, put her hands up, get the congratulatory hugs, hopefully a cold drink, maybe an adult beverage to celebrate.
Maybe. But I will say, this is one of the things I love about Lauren is that, like, right now, she knows she has a big lead. She's been told that from people on the side of the course, but she wants to go as hard as she can till she crosses that finish line. And I love that about her personality and just her grit as a racer.
Oh, she has so much determination, and I expect that when she crosses this finish line, I wouldn't doubt that she's just immediately on the ground.
Cracked. She's
People are going to be like catching her bike for her as she falls off, because that's just what it's what she does. It's how she rides. She puts everything into that effort to get to the finish line right now.
That's so awesome. Again, for those of you just tuning in, you're watching Steamboat Gravel Live presented by Wahoo Fitness. We're here in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and just a few minutes away from watching our women's leader, Lauren De Crescenzo, come across the finish line here. Amazing performance from her today. She's dropped her ride earlier in the day, and she is riding all on her own.
Yes, it's just incredible. I mean, this close to the finish, that she still has this much energy to drop her, to her two companions, because she's just like, I'm sure she can feel that adrenaline and that excitement right now. She knows that she's going to have teammates at the finish, director, whatever, just people there ready to congratulate her. And phenomenal performance by her. Again, she is the winner of Unbound.
It's crazy.
So to be able to come back again, just a month or a couple months later and pull it off again here in Steamboat is incredible.
For all of gravel racing right now, Lauren is the one that is doing all the things. Like, she is a head and shoulders above everyone else. To win the two biggest races in gravel racing in the same year is an amazing, amazing accomplishment as we watch Lauren get through some tricky sections of this course. That right-hand corner, we saw our sprint finish earlier. Meredith, she's going to have a left-hand corner here, and then she's just going to have a few hundred meters to go before her day is done, and she will have won the two biggest races in gravel racing.
Definitely. We're going to hear the fans going crazy here just in any second now as we see her come up before the finish line behind us, celebrating already. She knows what she's done, and she is so happy.
So awesome. It couldn't have happened to a better person, but there you go, your 2021 Steamboat Gravel Women's Champion, Lauren De Crescenzo. Amazing, amazing result. She's getting another big hug from one of her support crew, but amazing, amazing finish by Lauren. We are going to go to a break here really quickly, but we're going to be back with an interview from Meredith down with Lauren on course here in just 1 second. Please, please stay with us.
We are here at the finish line with the women's winner, Lauren De Crescenzo. Congratulations on a fantastic ride. After winning Unbound this year, you came out and won Steamboat Gravel. What does this mean to you, and how did you prepare for this?
I prepared for this by living in Colorado for all of my life. The elevation is nothing new to me. Being high up, I grew up in Broomfield, Colorado, so my whole family is like right behind us. Yeah, it was very exciting having my entire family here, and like I knew basically everyone in the race. Yeah, all the people I grew up with, training with, and riding with, and yeah, it's amazing to win a hometown race because this is my hometown, Colorado.
Yeah, does that play into how what you're feeling out there? Does that give you a little bit of extra motivation knowing that your family is waiting here for you at the finish?
Yeah, I was like, I just want to make my dad proud today. It's his first gravel race he's been to, so I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna at least take this one home for dad. Yeah.
So how was it out there? Can you tell us a little bit about how things unfolded? We didn't have a lot of camera coverage out there. So where did you make your big move?
My big move was on the second climb. It was me and Lauren Stevens and a big group of guys. And, we were just like waiting for the climb. And then as soon as we hit the climb, I was gloves out. That's my jam. I just kick into action like hour 3. And I'm like, all right, ready to do my interval up this really long climb.
Well, when you were coming into the finish line, you looked so strong. We saw you trading poles with a couple other guys, and you looked, eventually you dropped them. And we were just like, oh my gosh, she is in go mode right now. Doesn't matter that she has a gap behind her.
Oh, okay, I can snap in action now.
I mean, even though you didn't need to sprint to the finish, you had plenty of time to raise your arms in the air. I mean, you just came in looking so strong. Looked like you just had an incredible ride out there today. You were feeling great.
I feel like I'm at home, so it was easy. I was very comfortable being. I spent a lot of time in Steamboat. I mean, Amy Charity, the race organizer, was my maid of honor 2 months ago. So I spent a lot of time in Steamboat. I have family in Steamboat too. My husband's family lives here.
And is your husband here today too?
Yeah, he should be finishing in a few minutes.
So he's actually out racing as well. Did you see him out on course? Did you give him a little pat on the back when you went by?
He was ahead of me, and then I don't know. I just keep the same speed the whole time. I don't know.
Well, that's great. I hope that you've got a good celebration planned with your family here tonight, and some good recovery and downtime before. What's next for you?
Gravel Worlds next weekend.
Next weekend.
Yeah, so I'm going back to Broomfield tomorrow. Going to my brother's birthday party, and then we're driving to Nebraska.
Well, fantastic. It's great to chat with you. Congratulations on another fantastic win. I hope that you get to celebrate, really, have a good night with your family, get in recovery mode, and then good luck for next weekend.
Thank you so much. I'm just not even thinking about next weekend. I was going to vote today is today.
Yeah, one thing at a time, one thing at a time.
It's like, that's next week's problem.
I hear you. Great. Well, congratulations, and we're going to send it back up to Matt Lieto in the booth to pick up more of the women's race.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, Meredith.
She took the gloves off when they hit that Trout Creek climb, and this is where she took the gloves off and pushed herself away from the rest of the field as she goes into that finish line just the last few miles. Lauren De Crescenzo with an amazing performance here at Steamboat Gravel. Here she is, that last left-hand corner. When you hit this straightaway, you know you're almost there. And here's a shot of her going. She didn't need to do a sprint finish, but she still put in a pretty solid effort, Meredith. And how great was it to sit down or stand next to you and talk to Lauren here?
You could just feel the excitement coming out of her, even with how exhausted she was. And I mentioned to her, like, you were dropping your companions, and coming into the finish, and she's like, yeah, I still 1 mile to go, and thought, well, I better go. So she had, she had a pretty significant lead on any of the chasers, but yet she still was not willing to give up until she was finally couple hundred or 10, 20 meters away from the line before she finally celebrated.
I will say, we both were like, oh, she's going to be cracked when she crosses the finish line. And it's the fact that she just has so much energy. I mean, obviously that job at the CDC's got to be, at least these days, probably pretty stressful, pretty strenuous. Wins a gravel race here today, has to go to a birthday party and then drive across the country to go try to win another gravel race, which I would not bet against her.
No, definitely not. I mean, she's clearly, she's fit, she's strong, she's determined. I mean, like you said, she's won 2 of the biggest gravel races really this year already. So, my gosh, now the question will be, can she recover? But I think that she's a true professional. She's been racing for a long time, so she knows what it takes now to recover and be able to do this again next weekend.
Totally, but I think at this point now we can say that Lauren is the best gravel racing in professional gravel racing right now. And we're going to go to the men's results here. Alex Howe is in 6 hours, 19 minutes, 44 seconds, just in front of Ian Boswell, Peter Stetina, and then Adam Roberge coming across solo. It looks like they had a little bit of a sprint there for 4th and 5th over Freddie Ovett riding for the Legion team. So amazing, amazing result. That's our top 5 men. But Meredith, both these fields were, it's easy when you look at the results. You're like, oh, okay, that's a pretty good field. But the start list, and these races are races of attrition. So, these start lists were nuts on both sides.
These start lists, the fields for today's race was stacked. I mean, it was really, really hard to go through and say, oh, we think we have the clear winner picked, because there was so much talent on the start line today, both for the men's and the women's races. And the only kind of chink in the armor, or whatever you want to say, was the fact that some of these racers that we thought would win today also did Leadville 100 yesterday. So we have some racers that have done a 100-mile mountain bike race yesterday and came into a 144-mile gravel race today. So there's that, you kind of throw that card in there, and it might shift things around a little bit, but certainly didn't slow a lot of these people down.
No, it certainly didn't. I mean, it's obviously we're talking about, it's an understatement to say these are impressive athletes out here today. But what's great about a race like Steamboat Gravel is, Meredith, there's been people crossing the finish line for 4 or 5 hours. There's a bunch of different race distances. And again, gravel is, it's a lot less intimidating. Hearing the word gravel can in itself be intimidating, but the scene and the community tends to be very encouraging. And one great thing about Steamboat Gravel is the effect that we have the ability to encourage new riders to come and start shorter distances. So again, all shapes and sizes and experience levels have been crossing the finish line right behind us all day.
Yeah, I mean, and even in the days leading up to this race, there was a lot going on. We had the Ride for Racial Justice, and I mean, it's just phenomenal to see how welcoming Steamboat Gravel has been to an entire community of people who ride bikes, not just the racers, because that's really only like the top 1% of the 3,000 people that we see out here, so there are a lot of other people here, like you said, all shapes and sizes, all, some just wanting to, their goal today is just to finish because this is a bucket list event for them, and they've been training, to come out here and finish and get to the finish line. Doesn't matter what their time might be, they just want to cross the finish line.
Absolutely, and a lot of different events going on this week. One event that we were able to get to earlier in the week was the Ride for Racial Justice, and we've got a little piece to show you kind of what went down with that earlier this week.
Ride for Racial Justice is a 501c3 based in Denver, Colorado. And we are here to get more BIPOC folks on the bike, to reduce systemic racism, to show the world that we all can coexist together, we can have fun, and we can learn from each other. And that things just don't have to be the way they used to be. America's changed. Let's change together. Thank you, Steamboat. Why to come to Steamboat? Best gravel race around, period. Steamboat is great. I used to come here and ski years and years ago. Best place ever. Champagne powder, champagne gravel, Steamboat Springs, it's just great. It's really important that we're up here because we're showing the world what we can do. We're showing the world that we can all enjoy these lands together. We're showing the world that we can all exist on the bike and have fun, and we can learn from one another. And that's what it's all about. And Steamboat is a place to do it. So folks, look, if you're looking for something to do, come to Steamboat Springs, ride a bike. To find out more about us, rideforracialjustice.org. Check us out on Instagram. I'm just so excited. I can't get all this stuff straight. I'm just happy. Come hang out with us. Okay, check me out. I'm gonna be rolling, okay? I'm gonna rip somebody's legs off because there it is. All right, bye.
That's so awesome, Meredith. What stands out to me is things don't have to be how they used to be. And it's amazing. And you can tell over the last few years, there's more diversity in this sport, and I think it's because gravel is so welcoming in general.
In particular, Steamboat Gravel, they have done a phenomenal job. This is only year 2, should be year 3. Obviously, we had last year off, but just in year 2, what this race has been able to do to attract people and how welcoming they have been to get people to this event. Let's not necessarily call it a race because it's not for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
But I mean, it makes me emotional because I love cycling so much. I love riding my bike, and to be able to share that with so many other people in the community who may not have felt comfortable or included, to see them here at this event is just, it's a really cool thing, and it makes me happy.
And a lot of what helps these athletes become great racers is opportunity. And Wahoo Fitness has been gracious enough to work on this project called the FIRSA Project, and they are taking a small group of athletes and trying to give them opportunities that we in North America take for granted. I know for me and you, it's easy for us to get on a bike and race wherever we want. For a lot of people, doors need to be open for them. So let's take a look about what Wahoo's doing with the FIRSA Project.
Well, the opportunity, what it means to me is probably to be given a chance.
I think some people are born with opportunity. Other people never get opportunity in the first place.
To have opportunity to go and race outside is a very big thing for me.
Sometimes something that I don't see many African riders being given.
Regroup all the shattered dreams to come back together again and keep pushing on.
My name is Sule Kangangi. I'm a cyclist still riding at high level. I first discovered cycling 10, 11 years ago. While I was working as a milk vendor, I saw a cycling race. For me, it was quite fascinating to see how the town came to a standstill, and I wanted to be like one of those guys who I saw that day on the road.
My name is John Kariuki. I've been riding from 2016 in Eldoret in Kenya, called Kenya Riders, and these are my first gravel race. Racing, it gives you opportunity to go many places that I never thought I would go. Opportunity to go in US and racing with the big boys, it means to me a lot.
My name is Geoffrey Langat and I'm a Kenyan. I'm riding for Amani team in this race. I wanted to do a different sport from running, and I was impressed about the roller skating. But then every time I was doing roller skating on the road, I would see these cyclists passing by. I was impressed. This sport is also good. I could try, and then that's how my cycling journey started.
Like yesterday I was talking to Ian, like I was telling him, I already feel like it's a win because it's something that has never happened before.
So I'm happy also gaining experience of gravel. It's a really good opportunity for us.
To go to the US and race SBT, I think it will mean a lot, not only for me, but for other people who I want to encourage. It's giving the opportunity to the African riders to see where they are against the best.
Amani, they're doing a very incredible job. Out of generosity, they want to see the Africans also being there up in cycling. Gravel racing in Africa, if you're there, you need to get into cycling. This is the right way to go.
You're watching Steamboat Gravel Live, presented by Wahoo, and we'll see you on the other side of this quick break. Welcome back to Steamboat Gravel Live, presented by Wahoo Fitness. Meredith, we did have now our top 3 women across the line, right?
Yes, we do. So as we all know, we saw the interview with Lauren De Crescenzo, who had a fabulous race out there.
Amazing.
I think all the feedback we were getting from all day long was that she was just riding so strong. Coming in second behind her was Lauren Stevens. Great ride by her to round out the podium.
She had the fresh legs, and she was able to get across the finish line in third. So amazing performances. Again, this course goes over a lot of different terrain. You know, a lot of climbs, a lot of pavement, a lot of gravel. Meredith, you and I were able to check out kind of one of the premier sections that we got to the race right after these athletes finished Cow Creek, but we were able to ride this the other day, and I think we have a little video of you trying to drop me on that technical descent, right?
All right, Matt, we are just over 132 miles into the course now.
Yeah.
We're on the final gravel section of the day. This is Cow Creek. As you can see, it kind of throws everything at us. So what's your feedback on this section from 2019, and what do you expect to see on race day?
Well, as you can see, there's a lot in this section. There's some smooth gravel sections, and then there's some bumpy sections, and then just a lot of like loose rock. For me, a few years ago, all I can remember is just cursing at myself because I didn't want to be the spot where I flatted or something broke on my bike and I fell out of the top 10. And I think that's what a lot of athletes are going to be worried about. But it's also, I think, because of that, where the technical riders See this section here? You can't really pick a good line, right?
Yeah.
So I think the technically savvy riders will try to take advantage of this section.
Sure. So how does this section, especially coming so late in the day, how does this section play into the tactics? You know, roadies versus mountain bikers, you know, how does that play out?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a roadie and there's a group still in corkscrew, you're going to attack there. If you're a mountain biker, you're just going to try to stay on the corkscrew, sit on wheels, and then try to get a gap here and bring it into the finish, because there's only like 8 miles, 9 miles of smooth pavement left. This is your last chance if you're a mountain biker to get rid of the roadies.
Sure, and this is a 3-mile section.
Yeah.
So it's still long enough that a lot can happen, and so you kind of have to weigh the risk versus the reward, I'd say, on this section a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
like I just kind of got stuck in a rut. Didn't see that coming.
Right, and you can see that there's a lot of light changes here that kind of throws your vision off a little bit. You don't know what might be coming around the next turn. Is it sandy, rocky? Is it hard packed? I mean, the racers have been used to a lot of fast, hard packed stuff, and this is a little different.
Totally, and I think the biggest thing that makes this challenging is you've got the brain fog because you're so late in the race, you're cracked, it's hot, you're probably a little dehydrated, you don't have all your wits about you. So if you're gonna get tested in rugged gravel on this course, it's gonna be on Cow Creek.
Right, I mean, it's you have to have your wits about you. You can make some bad choices, bad line choices, so it's really about like making sure you're following the right lines, because a crash could change everything, so, or a flat could change everything right here, which is so close to the finish line.
Yeah, so definitely a course you want to, or a section of the course you want to make sure you've got 35s or better, probably 38s, and try to make sure you have a gel before you dip into Cow Creek, because you want your, as you said, you want your wits about you.
Yeah, you're probably going to be riding in the drops through this section and just pinning it if you feel comfortable. So not a lot of drinking or eating going on, and then you still have, what, like you said, 8 to 9 miles to go at the finish.
Yep, last section of gravel, now we're back onto the road after Cow Creek. There you go. That was fun. Thanks for not dropping me, and I'm stoked I didn't crash in front of you. I don't want to take you out. It's definitely
would have been embarrassing.
That was my primary goal of that piece. But if people watching at home, you might think, man, those road bikes look a little bit different, and how can you ride a road bike on terrain like that? And that's kind of what's allowed gravel racing to get where it's at, is actually technology, disc brakes, different things, opening things up. And, you know, we've got maybe a little bit more detail on some athletes' bikes.
Yeah, if you were watching the Olympics, gravel is not part of the Olympics, so you haven't seen these bikes before. So we're going to go to Jason Mahoney from Gravel Cyclist, who had a chance to catch up with Lauren De Crescenzo as she talks about her gravel bike.
Hello again. Now I'm joined by Lauren De Crescenzo. She is the reigning queen of Unbound 200 gravel, and that was a pretty amazing victory. Also pretty amazing is this Colnago she's got here. The same bike, but could be slightly different. What have you done with your bike for the Steamboat gravel race? Anything has changed from Unbound?
Well, I think the main differentiator here is the tire choice. I did not run slicks at Unbound.
Not recommended.
Not recommended, no. I'm running 44 slicks, the Renee Hurst, and I'm debating between the super light version and the endurance version, and that's going to be a game time decision.
I like it. You're living on the edge. Excellent.
Living on the edge.
Okay.
The gravel around here is pretty nice.
And you're running a full SRAM, it looks like red E-Tap group set. Is this any of the new parts from SRAM, the Explore group set, or just the older Access parts?
This has got to, I'm just using what came on the bike.
Okay then. Excellent. Lauren, how are you going to approach Steamboat gravel? There's a lot of climbing.
Oh yes.
Yes.
There definitely is a lot of climbing at altitude.
Yes, you have experience, I know. So any thoughts?
Yes, I think that it's going to be a much bigger group than it was at Unbound. I think the group's going to stay together a lot more given the gravel that we have here. But, you know, I think I'm just going to stay in the group.
Funny fact, I rode the very first time in Steamboat Springs with Lauren on a pre-ride of this race, and she was on 28mm tires. So she's come quite a long way, has a lot more experience.
That was back in 2018. That was the first rendition of the course. We were doing a pre-ride in 2018.
Lauren, final question. The wristband you're wearing,
yes.
What does it represent?
This was actually sent to me. One of my friends gave it to me. We had a pool of people who support, like trans rights, and she got me one. And then Molly Cameron, a transgender athlete at BWR, saw me wearing it at the start line, and she sent me 20 wristbands to my house in Atlanta. So it's for trans rights.
Thank you very much. Awesome. Well, good luck in the race.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That Lauren is representing, so that's awesome. Again, we've got more coming at you, but right now we're going to go to a quick break, and we'll have more good coverage of Steamboat Gravel Live when we come back. You're back with Steamboat Gravel Live, presented by Wahoo Fitness. We're out here today. We saw two great races. We had Alex Howes winning a sprint finish to win the men's race. And just a few minutes ago, it was Lauren De Crescenzo to win the women's race solo. So amazing, amazing races and great performances.
You know, and what we talked about earlier today was the fact that Lauren was not that far back from the men's race. In 2019, she was about, the Brody Chapman, who was 2019 winner, was about 20 minutes back. We thought that that Fetcher Ranch section might kind of blow things apart today and extend that gap between the men and the women. The fact that they actually weren't that far behind today, I don't know exactly what the time gap was, but it was probably pretty close, was amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, it really was. And they show every year that they're right over your shoulder. If you're a man at the front of the race, you better be pushing the effort. But one of the spots on the course where the race was split up early, where it took some effort early in the race, was at Fetcher Ranch, a local rancher that allowed the race to go through their property and really offered a dynamic and a different type of gravel and terrain that we could ride over here earlier today.
This community, right, the Yampa Valley, is built on the backs of agriculture and recreation. And so you can't have one without the other.
So in 1994, we were approached by some of our other neighbors. And so we started talking about conservation easements. And my dad was there like that. He wanted that ranch to stay the way it was forever. Mainly it was love of the land. So all our land here is protected forever. There won't be golf courses, condominiums, anything on this land. And it'll be so fun to share that with however many bicyclists come through here on August 15th.
We were so lucky to have the opportunity to work with Jay, and it all started actually in 2018 when we were planning out the course, and we were trying to avoid all that time on 129, and we knew that Jay had property up there, and so the team went out to lunch with him and discussed, is there a chance that we could ride on part of your property?
Will learned about the gravel race and reached out and said, well, do you want to ride through the ranch at Clark and come up 62 to here? And we said, absolutely yes.
I mean, we have to recognize that our activity is happening within a broader community. There are ranchers using the gravel roads that we rode here today and that we're going to be racing on. And this is shared public space, and so let's just step back a little bit, look at the big picture, and say, you know, we're in this together.
Yeah, I think what we find is that we're riding through some of these, these ranches, and we sometimes forget the importance of how we exist in their environment. When you hear Jay Fetcher as being somebody who's opening up his ranch to this, it is an opportunity for us to create the camaraderie, to create that community.
The first is that we're using a shared resource, right? Agriculture and recreation love the land. We have that in common, and if we can build on that common ground, it's only going to help us both do better, both sides of that equation, and understand that there's a shared value there.
You know, to be asked to come out and do a work day like this, it's just great that Jay Fetcher allowed this and that it's a magical part of the course.
I think that the Fetcher family definitely draws a standard that can be set for this type of relationship.
I've always been a rider, and I've only been a rancher for about 25 years. What makes us similar is that we both love being outdoors. I'm lucky I get to do both. I hope they get an appreciation for, you know, what the Fetcher family over the generations has done to preserve and steward this land.
We have to talk about what else we offer the world. So this, sharing this stuff just allows us to keep talking about that message, that we're all in this together.
That's so awesome. Again, that's one thing that separates Steamboat Springs in this race in general is the community involvement and the support. Seeing the ranchers, you know, I was riding with somebody the other day. They said, man, half the ranchers here ride bikes too. So it's great and such a blessing to be able to use that property and to see that community support. Meredith, it's been an amazing, amazing race. We kind of knew it was going to be. We had the start list was out of control.
Again, amazing race by everybody who came out here today. We had 1,000 people sign up for the black course, another 1,000 for the blue, and another 1,000 between the green and the red. So overall today has just, the atmosphere has been amazing. It's been amazing in the days leading up to actual event day. And still we're seeing so many people lined up against the finish line, waiting for their friends, family to come in. And it's been incredible to be here and part of it.
And again, most of our coverage was focused on the elite racers, and that percentage is tiny. You know, it might be 5%, maybe even less. But out of the other 3,000 people, again, it's first-timers. It's people crossing the finish line. Alex Howes, his goal was to win the race, as was Lauren De Crescenzo's when they started at the start line. Other people are like, oh man, I don't know if I can cross that finish line. So the amount of effort and accomplishment that has gone on here today in Steamboat Springs is amazing.
Yes. I hope that everybody has, congratulates each other today. There was a lot of camaraderie out there today. I'm sure we'll see a lot of people celebrating just in the fact that they finished, whether you raised your arms across the finish line or not.
Absolutely. Thank you for watching Steamboat Gravel Live. I'm Matt Lieto with Meredith Miller. Thank you so much for watching.